Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. There's some big news that came out today. I'm recording this on Friday, the 24th. The Church of Jesus Christ announces the addition of 55 new missions in 2026. Okay, so this stuck out to me because last year, the church did something similar where they created 36 new missions. And this is substantially more. And of course, this has to do with the hastening and preparing a people to prepare the world for the second coming. I feel like a lot of this is preparing for this transition from the world that we're currently in into the millennial world, where we're going to need as many people as possible. That's going to be our greatest time of missionary work, is at the beginning of the millennium. But we have to have as many leaders as possible within the church, and just be prepared to take in a really large influx after the second coming. That's my opinion based on what we've studied and the words of prophets and general authorities. So the article says, at a time when increasing numbers of young members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints continue to choose to serve full-time missions, the church is announcing plans to create an additional 55 missions effective July 1st, 2026. The new missions will help to accommodate a growing number of missionaries already called and will allow missionaries to better support the increasing number of congregations throughout the world. The 55 new missions will be created by adjusting the boundaries of existing missions, will bring the number of church missions to will bring the number of church missions around the world to 506. That's a really big number. We're going to look more at that in just a minute. You guys, this is pretty big news. Later on, it says the number of young teaching and service missionaries and senior missionaries has gone from just over 65,000 at the end of 2022 to nearly 72,000 at the end of 2023, and is currently at more than 84,000. They serve in more than 150 countries and teach in more than 60 languages. Now, there's a few things I want to point out at the bottom. They have a list of all the new missions. The first section is all these African missions. We've talked about how Africa is just like coming to life in recent years. I would say, over the last decade, from my point of view. Something is definitely happening in Africa, and it's reflected in all these missions that are being created in Africa Central, Africa South, Africa West. Okay. Compare that to some of these other locations. They don't really compare. Oh, I meant to highlight this. You have a bunch in the Philippines. Let's go ahead and do that in red. Not as much as Africa, of course, but still, for any given area here, I feel like that's quite a bit for just such a small area. The Philippines is one of the largest countries in the church. If I remember right, I think it's in the number 4 spot of country with total members of the church. It goes the United States with something like 6 million. And then after that, I think Mexico is next. They have over 1 million. You have Brazil with over 1 million. And then the Philippines after that. They're approaching a million. Of interest to me, and maybe you too, I've already covered on this channel the fact that the Kansas City area is growing, which of course is significant because this is where the Kansas City area is where Independence is at. I'm sure, just like the article said, the Independence mission is probably it's not going away, but they're creating another mission in this area. This area is growing. The outgoing area president, Elder Morgan, said that over the last 5 years, the Kansas City area has seen significant growth. And I think there's a reason why. First of all, you have a lot of members of the church that are moving here, from what I can tell, and I'm one of them. But also, just missionary efforts are flourishing here. Okay. I was also interested, just for personal reasons, there's going to be an Arizona Phoenix East mission. I used to live in the Phoenix area. And then Coeur d'Alene, which is where my mother-in-law lives. And recently there was a temple announced for Coeur d'Alene. This is in northern Idaho, pretty close to Spokane. But you might want to go through this list and see if any of these locations are special to you, or maybe if you live in one of these areas. Well, maybe you could also include the Pacific. That seems pretty sizable compared to some of the other ones. Yeah. Africa as a whole, Pacific, Philippines, and then I'm excited about this Missouri, Kansas City mission. Okay. I have a spreadsheet called Timeline Missionary Work. And I'm expanding this. I want to track more things. I'm starting to develop all these like specialized timelines. And this one is going to be, it already has been, and it's going to continue to be for missionary work. Okay. So I've been keeping track of the major milestones in missionary work. Let's just do a quick review of what I already have on here. And of course, I don't have everything, but the first item that I have is in 1961, you had the 6-lesson teaching plan, and also every member a missionary. And then in 2002, you had this concept of raising the bar, where the church didn't want to just send out missionaries that didn't really have testimonies, or you weren't supposed to go on a mission to gain a testimony. You need to be ready to go. And they raised the standards to make sure that missionaries were already where they need to be to serve a mission. And shortly after that, and I was in the first group to use this when I went on my mission in 2004, Preach My Gospel was introduced. And that replaced the old, 6-lesson teaching plan. We actually still were kind of using it a little bit as we were transitioning between these two ways of teaching the gospel. Okay, and then in 2012, which I think was a significant year for the church for many different reasons. And by the way, that's when the Kansas City Temple was dedicated, and also the year of the Mormon moment and Mitt Romney and all this stuff. In that same year, there was the lowering of the mission age, and that was a huge thing. President Nelson comes on the scene. He introduces the idea of the Lord's Youth Battalion, and I tend to think that that's like a real thing. I tend to think, my own personal belief and speculation is that this is the last team that's up to bat. I feel like this is President Nelson's last half of the 9th inning, where you have the home team, and it's the last part of the baseball game, the very end. And then 2022, it was during the April General Conference of 2022, President Nelson and others were focusing on missionaries, how there was a need for more missionaries. It was kind of like a big call out for missionaries. That was kind of the theme of that conference. The next year, we got the second edition of Preach My Gospel. And then in 2024, so circling back around, 2024, there were 36 new missions created. And I thought that was a pretty big deal. I made a video about it, so that's why I was shocked when I saw the announcement today of 55 new missions, because back then, that brought the total number of missions across the church to 450. And at that point, that was the highest number of missions in church history. Well, now they announce 55, and that brings the number to 506. So that's pretty incredible. I'm kind of taken aback by that. That's very exciting. And then we have this thing over here with the number of missionaries. So, okay, column D is church membership over the years. Column E is the number of full-time teaching missionaries or proselyting missionaries. And it's not because I'm excluding the senior missionaries or service missionaries. It's just that when I was looking for a data set, traditionally this is the number that was tracked is the number of full-time teaching missionaries. But we also have this other number of total missionaries. Okay, teaching missionaries, service missionaries, senior missionaries. And I made a mistake one time. I made this video called Record Shattered. That was fast because I misinterpreted what was being said here. This is Newsroom. This is for Melbourne, Australia. And it talked about the fact that there were over 90,000 missionaries serving worldwide. I made the assumption that that was referring to teaching missionaries, but that's the total number of missionaries. If that number is correct, and I don't know why it wouldn't be, in at least as of the 8th of March, 2024, it's saying that there were 90,000. If we come back here, I put that number under, 2024. And what we just read from this most recent article, it said over 84. So I don't know if the number has gone down or, if there's some inaccuracy with these numbers, but I'm just taking note of both of them. Maybe it did go down a little bit. I'm not sure. But whatever the case, the church is definitely creating 55 new missions. So that must mean that, at least as far as full-time teaching missionaries go, that number must be increasing. And I think that it is, because if we go to this quote that I have on my spreadsheet called Quotes Second Coming, we have this really eye-opening and interesting quote. This is from Deseret News, June 28th, 2023. The number of Latter-day Saint missionaries is rising rapidly. Okay, we're going to be hearing from Elder Quentin L. Cook of the Quorum of the 12 and Elder Marcus B. Nash of the 70. Fewer children are being born today in most countries, and yet, even with quote-unquote fewer available, more are going out, Elder Cook said. If you look at the youth, their activity rate is higher than it has been. Convert baptisms also increased, Elder Cook said, up 25% in the first quarter of 2023 compared to last year. The number of missionaries serving has increased steadily since Church President Russell M. Nelson asked young people to go on missions at the April General Conference in 2022, from 56,000 at the end of 2021 to 68,000 by June 14th of this year. Quote, and we really do feel like we'll exceed 72,000 by the end of the year, Elder Cook said. So we're talking about 2023, and he just said 72,000. And let's see. Yeah, for the total number of missionaries, yes, 72,000. And then if we're talking about full-time missionaries, or the full-time teaching missionaries in 2024, it was 74. And then the total, if this number is correct, 90,000. So it seems like we definitely got to that mark. Okay. The influx of missionary applications. And there it is right there. This influx, which I guess started in 2022, it seems like it's continuing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have this article coming out about these 55 new missions to be created in 2026. It must be continuing. So the influx of missionary applications led to a need for more members of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles to make mission assignments. Typically, 2 apostles assign mission calls weekly, but in recent months, as many as 4 apostles have been making up to 300 calls a week, Elder Cook said. Much of this runs counter to the popular narrative that young people are less religious today, yet new data tracking attitudes across generations shows an uptick in religiosity among the religious members of the millennial and Gen Z generations compared to baby boomers and Gen X. Overall, religiosity is going down among all Americans over the past few decades, and yet, compared with earlier generations, there are signs that young people are even more committed to their faith. The phenomenon church leaders are seeing among young people who are signing up to go on missions is that they are responding in higher numbers, in higher percentages than previous generations, Elder Cook said. As Elder Marcus B. Nash, a General Authority 70 and the executive director of the church's missionary department, said at the Missionary Training Center, quote, "There's just something going on, and I don't know how to explain it other than the prophet spoke in April 2022, and this rising generation that he teaches us was held in reserve are responding." You guys, it's still happening. It's still happening right now. And this is just a side note, but on my spreadsheet called Timeline Second Coming, it's not just missions, but you have the youth in other areas breaking records. So this one has to do with BYU Idaho. It says BYU Idaho breaks enrollment records. Number one, most new students, including transfer students, for second year in a row, up 18% over last year. Number two, largest number of new freshmen, 5,500, breaking the previous record of 4,900 in 2020, up 11%. And then also, am I going to try and do it? No. I have other quotes here that talk about the fact that enrollment in, I think, both seminary and institute records are being broken. It's just like the youth of the church are just becoming very active in their spiritual life, and they're responding, and they're doing what they should do. Something really amazing is happening right now, you guys. So let's see. I think that's all I have to share. 36 to 55. I wish I had all the numbers, like every time that they've announced a new batch of new missions. That's going to take some digging. I'll see if I can do it. But I wonder how that compares to the past. Has there ever been a time where they've announced 55 or more missions? I don't know, but it seems like this is record breaking. And certainly the total number of missions, 506, that is for sure record breaking. And then you just look at this number of missionaries, whether it's the full-time teaching or just the total number of missionaries. How high is that number going to go? Like we really took a hit in 2020 and 2021 because of the pandemic. Numbers were down, both the number of missionaries as well as the number of new converts. So missionary work was down. But now it seems like it's coming back in a big way. If we're looking at full-time teaching missionaries, we might get back up to where we were in 2013 and 2014, where we were in the 80,000 range. And that was because of the lowering of the mission age. That's why that happened. But now it seems like we're just rebounding from the pandemic, and we're going to like organically get to those levels, not because of another lowering. Well, I don't think the mission age can be lowered anymore. But it's not going to be like something like that. That's just what's happening. It's happening organically. And of course, we know that there's something with President Nelson's request and what they've been prepared for in the premortal life. But anyway, you get the idea. I'm really excited to get to 18 million, 19, 20. Those numbers may come quicker than we realize. And I think that will be the case. In this last general conference, and also I think in church news and elsewhere, we've seen that they're talking about large numbers of people joining the church across the world in all regions. How we saw this from May of 2024 to May of 2025, the largest number of convert baptisms for a 12-month period in church history. That's record breaking. But I don't think it's going to end there. I think some pretty incredible things are on the horizon, you guys. And I think it has to do with the second coming. And then it's obviously going to go to a whole new level when there's that massive influx of people that join the church. Things are going to be mind-blowing. And you know what? Let's end it with that. There's a quote that I have on here from President Holland. Let's see, much larger than that. Yeah, here it is. Okay, thank goodness. I found it. And then I lost it. Then that. I just had it. Okay, here it is. Okay, row 47, in case I lose it again. Okay, this is President Jeffrey R. Holland, Church News, November 15th, 2024. It's an article called This Week on Social, President Nelson on dedicating the church's 200th temple. I am filled with awe. And this is what President Holland says. Whatever you think the church is going to be, it's going to be a lot more than that. It definitely will. It definitely will. It's happening. Okay, that's going to be for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.